Hello, everyone. My name is Amber Gunst. I'm the CEO of Austin Technology Council, and I'm very excited that you've all joined us this evening for another CEO conversation. And we're incredibly thankful to our sponsors, Cooley and Deloitte. And this evening, we have Chase Berg with Deloitte, who is going to kick our program off for us. As always, if you have questions, you can use the Q&A function in the chat bar. And we love questions from our members and our attendees, so please make sure you ask plenty. And Chase and Greg and Kiwi will cover them, but I'm going to toss everything over to Chase now, and I hope you all enjoy the conversation. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Amber. As you mentioned, I'm Chase Berg. I'm a partner at Deloitte. I lead our audit practice here in Austin. So happy that we're able to be a sponsor here and happy to introduce Greg and Kiwi. It's going to be a quick intro because based on how the pre-call went the other day, these guys have a number of topics they'll hit on, but who knows which direction the conversation is going to go. So it's very free flowing. To the extent that you have Q&A, please add those down to the Q&A section at the bottom. And at the tail end of this call, we will go through the Q&A. And so with that, Greg, Kiwi, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thanks so much, Chase. Just quick intros for Kiwi and I. My name is Greg Gilmore. I'm CEO of Planview. I've been in the chair now for going on 24 years. So I'm kind of unusual in this technology space that I've seen the company grow and change and evolve, and at the same time have seen Austin do the same thing. And it's absolutely an honor to be virtually sitting alongside my good friend Kiwi. It's also an honor to have the opportunity to speak to and talk with each and every one of you. Kiwi?
Thanks, Greg and Amber and Chase. Really appreciate the invitation. I'm Kiwi Camara, founder and CEO of Disco. I've been in the seat, I guess, since 2013 when we got started. Yeah, very eager to have this conversation. Encourage folks to post questions in the chat. And I think Greg and I would both prefer to talk about whatever all of you are interested in. Greg, you've had such a long tenure at Planview, and I think it's coming to an end. Love to hear how you're feeling about that, and maybe also how you thought about succession for the CEO role.
Yeah, and for those of you who aren't aware, after many years, I think I've been in the chair for 98 straight quarters, and my expiration date has passed. So I'm going to be stepping away from the company here in May. It's been a great journey, right? And I think the thing that I'm probably most proud of is the fact that, through it all, we've never compromised our culture, and culture has always been an important part of the business. And as such, I believe that, as we continue to drive the company forward from a succession standpoint, I think there are those things that just absolutely matter, the things that are the cornerstones of the business. And one of those I mentioned is culture. And I think as we think about succession, both whoever sits in my chair and frankly, what happens after I'm gone, I think the reality is that those things that have made Planview special, the fact that, it's a customer-centric and employee-centric culture. I say every time I have the privilege and honor of addressing our employees, I say one thing every single time I have that opportunity, and it's this: great people make companies great. And the ethos of the succession is really making sure that those core tenets of culture and leadership remain the same. Because again, what you want continuity, not upset. And that's something that we focused on as I've stepped away. From a personal standpoint, it's probably not going to be quite as smooth as I wake up going, what am I going to do today? But I'm sure I'll figure that out. I may be calling you, Kiwi. I'm sure you got something for me to do.
Have you always had a successor ready to go? I mean, even long before you decided to move on, or when did you start that succession planning process?
Well, I think it's one of those things that you're intentional about continuing to develop leadership. And again, the business, we're unique in that, Planview has grown both organically and through acquisition. And, you reach a scale in the business where it's not, it's not as easy to find kind of what that next leader looks like. And so we have to be intentional. We also have very, very engaged shareholders in that process. But yes, it's from a leadership standpoint, we've identified kind of what that looks like going forward. So how about you, Kiwi? Do you, how are you thinking about kind of developing, your team, your staff? How are you thinking about leadership?
It's a big focus of ours. We're, of course, much earlier than Planview, and we're going through that really rapid early growth phase. And one of the things that happens is as you get to each level of scale, people either need to grow into the jobs or they need to take different jobs, and new people come in, and it really puts pressure on this idea that you've got to be investing in who's going to come next, whether that's you or someone else. So I think it's something we struggle with. I think the other thing that's difficult for me, I'm I would be happy to continue in my seat for quite a long time, but at the same time, we want to build an organization where if I am hit by a bus tomorrow, there are folks ready and able to step in. And so that's one of the succession challenges that we face. What do you do? You can't have someone waiting in the wings for 5 or 10 or 15 years. The ambitious people go on to other things. And so how do you um, keep successors ready to go, even when the incumbents, not just me, but other executives, may have a long run ahead of them at the company.
Yeah. And, at our scale, we have very, very seasoned leaders. And what's important is, the reality is in our kind of definition is leadership it's not where you sit on an org chart. Right. And so when you think about kind of the succession of culture, you want that to be organic, right? You want that to come from the entirety of the employee base. And that's one thing that we want to do is just be intentional about leadership, not so much intentional about management. Right. And, that's something that we focused on at Planview. So I think we've done it well in some cases, maybe not so well in others.
One of the things I really admire about your story personally and Planview is that idea that it's a place where people can spend their whole careers. I think many of the kind of high growth startups, especially in the Valley, have adopted this kind of 4-year tours of duty model where employees don't really think of the company as a place where they might spend their whole careers, and where the flip side of that is companies underinvest in the development of internal talent and rely too much on lateral hiring to fuel growth. And this is something I feel strongly about, and that we've tried to be pretty intentional about at Disco, is how can we build what we like to call an institution, right? A place where people can do the work of their lives, can start at junior entry level roles and progress through the career. And how can we invest in them through learning and development programs? We have this thing called Disco University that seeks to develop people both in their job skills, but also in their leadership skills, right? So that 5 or 10 years from now, we have a whole cohort of homegrown leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. And I admire that so much, Kiwi, because being intentional about that is how you do retain key employees. And for us, the thing I keep harking on around culture, it's also the fact that we want people to feel like they're a part of something bigger, right? Not just the thing we try to do at Planview, which is serve our customers with excellence and put customers core, but we also want to try to be intentional about giving back to the community, about diversity and inclusion, about things that matter in our community and matter in our society. And, especially as you get people coming, out of universities, or what we call people that are more early in their career. What's key to, retaining those employees beyond just providing a great place to work, which frankly, when I think about my job, when I wake up in the morning, it's really about that. How do I create a great place to work? But beyond that, it's building community and networks and things where people really feel like that they're a part of something bigger than the company. I've admired as I've seen, very, very large companies do this. And I remember in the days of Planview when we were much smaller, and this harkens way back 20 years ago. We used to give people, and we called it 20 days of giving, where we would set aside a month and say, look, you guys can take off time, the go give back, do something in the community. And that was just something that was people felt very, very motivated by.
I think that last point you made about, how it's employee driven and it's kind of the employees coming up with things that they want to do, organizations that they want to support, is really powerful. We have this thing called Disco Cares, which is our philanthropy program that was started by just a Disco employee, and it's entirely employee led, right? The people we work with, how we volunteer. And so the causes change every year based on what folks are interested in doing. And it's something that I know the participants love it, but it also comes up all the time in recruitment, right? When we're talking to people about why Disco is a place where they could feel at home, the idea that there's a program like that it's important and that it's employee led is a key differentiator for us. The other thing
Right.
we try to do is really tie our work, our business, to a mission that matters. That's kind of the slogan that we use. And so our business, one point of view on what we do could seem quite boring, right? We make document review software for lawyers. And if you ask a lawyer about document review, boy, that's not one of their top 10 things to do. But another way of looking at what it is we do is we help lawyers find evidence in the most important legal disputes. We help them get to the truth so that justice can be done. And those two ways of articulating what we do as a company, I think that's the difference between getting people bought into a mission that matters and getting people to just think of it as a job.
Yeah. And one thing you said that's really important, and I could get passionate about this, one of the things I feel so affirmed by is this idea of culture. And the thing that just, when I finally realized culture has nothing to do with me, it needs to be that organic thing. I need to enable people. Right. But at the end of the day, the employees are the ones that kind of drive that culture forward in a very organic, constructive way. It's your job, Kiwi, and my job just to enable that to happen. And I really love the way that you've articulated it. One of the things I'd like to talk about briefly is kind of we touched in and around it. Just kind of thoughts on leadership and the idea. And I say this all the time: leadership has nothing to do where people sit on an org chart. People can be managers all day long and not leaders. And I'm very passionate about leadership, and I'm just curious, Kiwi, what your thoughts are and how you guys think about it there at Disco.
We have a saying that I like to use, that it's great people plus big problems equals great achievements. And it sounds simple, and it is simple, but I really think it's a big part of what it takes to build a successful company or a successful organization of any kind, right? And it links to the culture topic we mentioned earlier. You've got to explain to people why the mission that you're on matters and why you're winning on that mission. That's how you get really great people to want to sign up. And then you need to have the leadership to aim those great people at the biggest problems in your company, in your industry. You need to run toward the fire, and you need to develop that just as a habit that exists at every level of the organization. We look for the problems, and that's what we want to work on, the hardest, most broken part of the business. And if you do that repeatedly, right, you start to build that at every level of the organization, you get that kind of emergent leadership where it's not about management identifying problems, but it's everybody understands what we're trying to accomplish. They see what the big problems are in their area of operation, and they go to solve those things. And that kind of, it's sort of like the free market, right? It's that decentralized, bottom up decision making is just transformative if you can get it going in your organization.
Sure. I think about it like this. I think that leadership is about inspiring people to accomplish more than they ever thought possible.
Yes.
And one of the things you talked about was vision. I think as leaders, we and leaders have a responsibility to inspire. And inspiration doesn't necessarily, you don't have to look like me, right? People need to use their own talents and their own giftings, but inspiring and modeling the way, giving credit away, all those things are, because the reality is leaders are chosen. People want to follow leaders, and people that are poor leaders, what happens is they just choose to find another leader. And that's why I just separate the fact that there are managers and leaders, and how we coalesce those to make managers great leaders is the challenge that we take on intentionally at Planview.
Greg, how do you,
So
the flip side of that though is how do you think about developing great managers, right? Because
yeah,
you need both skills, and as
absolutely.
you say, they're quite different.
Absolutely. And again, intentional about management training and how people act as managers and how people treat employees, though. We try to coalesce the management principles and the leadership principles into one, right? And it's trying to create those opportunities to develop those individuals who have the opportunity to either sit in a management position or aspire to be managers. We actually have a mentoring program in our Women at Planview coalition, and that's where we try to mentor young people that aspire to be managers, but we also want to infuse in that core leadership tenets, right? And that's why we've, I think, been successful in really having a very tenured leadership team at Planview. Some of the folks that were on my staff have been with me 20 plus years, 15 years, 12 years, and that's just very affirming. And frankly, as we talked about the previous subject, succession, I do what I do simply because of three things. One, I love the people that I work with. I love the customers, and I love what the company does. And when I step away, I will truly, truly miss each and every one of those folks that I've had the privilege of working with over the years. And I truly feel like I'm the least important person in the company. And as we talked about, the company's going to go on. They may see me loitering around the lobby every now and then just to say hello. So, hey, go ahead. I'm sorry, bud.
No, far away.
I was going to say, interesting topic. As we've both kind of shepherded the company through the pandemic, talk about kind of things that you've seen, that you've done, how what you see that the pandemic has done that's going to be a good thing, things that you're seeing that you want to kind of get back to pre-pandemic. Talk about kind of those things around the pandemic and how you're visioning Disco in the post-pandemic world.
Well, I think the big and obvious one is remote work. I have been a lifelong opponent of remote work, and the pandemic essentially forced us to give it a try. And I was shocked at how effective it is. A lot of it, I think, is how much better technology like Zoom is, but really across all kinds of roles, including roles where I would have expected remote work to create a big productivity hit. It's been perfectly fine. And so we've moved, we envision in the world post-pandemic, we're going to have some sort of hybrid arrangement where folks can work in a mix of work environments, office and home, sort of depending on the role and depending on seniority. And that I think is common to lots of people. But what I have also noticed is that a consequence of the remote work is so much of the kind of early and mid-career interaction that happens outside your formal job responsibilities. When you and I were coming up, right, the meetings we got pulled into, or the work we observed, or things we were there, not part of our work, but just as a development opportunity for us. All those things happened so naturally when we were in the office, and they don't happen naturally at all in the kind of hybrid or remote work environment. And so how do you become intentional about creating those kinds of opportunities for early and mid-career folks, so they're getting the same kind of development experience that you and I did? That's something that's been very much on my mind. I don't have an answer to it, but I think it's something that all of us are going to have to figure out post-pandemic.
Yeah. For us, it was, we were fairly enabled as a remote kind of workforce, because we only had about a third of our employee base here in Austin, and we had a lot of field base and remote workers. And I think what really changed was, our customers that started moving quickly to adopting Zoom platforms or other platforms to work remotely. But the thing that I miss, Kiwi, is and I think you were kind of hitting on it, there's so much innovation that happens after a meeting ends, as people chat around the whiteboard or chat in the kitchen or whatever. And that's what I really am longing to get back to. We have a big office in Israel, and the leaders there are now moving to a 3-day work week starting the 1st of May, because the employees are longing to get back. And if you've tracked Israel, it's in a different situation, and so we're starting to see our employees miss the collaboration that, to your point, has just been missing through these times. But there's been good things happen as well, right? I've been shocked at how, like I said, our customers and very senior level people have, just continued to embrace the technology. We've done 3 M&A deals. This is almost shocking to me. We've done 3 M&A deals in the process, never meeting face-to-face one time. Never meeting face-to-face one time. That would have never happened, even 18 months ago. And the fact that we were able to do that, I think, and when for those of you out there who are watching this, if you've ever been involved in an M&A transaction, the number of nights of travel and things that used to happen, I mean, we just flattened all that, and you can be so much more productive doing it that way. And so I think that the world of M&A may be forever changed in a positive way. And like I said, 3 transactions that we were able to do, never once meeting face to face. So it's just been interesting as we've thought about it.
Greg, the big impact for me that was similar to that is sales territory visits. I used to make it a point, we have field sales, right? So I made it a point to visit every sales territory once a quarter. And as a consequence, I was traveling maybe up to 70% of the time. But now I actually find I can visit far more frequently, because the visit consists of a half day of back-to-back Zoom meetings. And so it's actually increased my connection to some of our field salespeople and to our customers in those geographies. And it's
100% agree. 100% agree. And I think that's a great thing, right? And to your point, I think the hybrid world going forward, I think is going to be good for everybody. It's just, how do we continue to promote innovation and human capital development, right? Where in that world. And, there's, like you said, there's no great answer. But, I think that it goes back to just being intentional, setting time aside to be intentional, make those connections in any and every way possible. Those are things that, intentionality, I think, is what we all have to have on the forefront of our minds, even as we kind of work into that hybrid model.
Greg, you've been through, all the way from startup to where you are now. What was your favorite part along the journey? What was your favorite stage at Planview, and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say this truly. Every phase of the company has been rewarding in its own way. But I'll tell you, if you go through these phases, I've said, both to personally, and as I've had the opportunity to speak professionally, you leave a little bit of yourself through each one of those transitions. And that's why I'm now, when I talk about the expiration dates past, I hearken back to the days when we were very small. I remember the very first holiday party, 8 of us stood around and played the piano and sang songs, and thinking about from whence we've come when you look at today, where we are. That's why I've always had such a, soft heart for young entrepreneurs starting businesses. And that's why I've admired what you've done, Kiwi, as I've watched what you've done from afar. And as I've gotten to know you, it's very admirable. It's just, when you think about starting a company and getting it to scale, it's just, I mean, you got to be as lucky as you are good. Market winds have to blow in your favor sometimes. You have to make hard decisions along the way. And I think one of the things for us is as we've made those hard decisions, we've never, ever lost sight of the fact that you're dealing with humans, right? And you treat people with dignity and respect. And that goes back to what I was referring to earlier, the cornerstones of the culture. I don't know that I could go back and run a startup like I did, because you just said once you get used to having a lot of scale, then you just go back and you kind of do it. But the short answer to your question is I really do miss that. And it's going to be funny to a lot of people out there. When I started, right, we didn't even have voicemail. We had these pink slips, and when you didn't get a call, there was a receptionist that would write down while you were out, Sally called and here's the number, and you'd come back from lunch with a stack of notes. And when you think about that, I mean, it's just amazing how technology's evolved. And I just remember those days being in an office that was so dark and dingy, but it was all that we could afford. And I remember we used to when people started, they used to have to put their desks together. We would get a desk from one of the old office supply companies, and it was in a flat box before the big flat box company even existed here in Austin. And so, I mean, those are just days that I look back on so fondly. And and even as we've gotten bigger, the days of working through big M&A transactions and bringing multiple cultures together and looking back on kind of how that looked, and, all the way to where we are now, when I see, bringing young people into the company and them thriving and developing and making such critical contributions to our success, all those things are fond memories for me, and things that I'll hold dear as I walk away from the company.
Do you have an alumni network? This is something we've, talked about at Disco getting going. Do you keep in touch? Is there any kind of formal thing like that?
We never did kind of formalize it, but the networks are very, very
The Planview Mafia.
Yeah, well, no, we haven't ever been. We haven't ever been that intentional, but it's amazing that I get outreaches often from people that are we've known from 20 years ago. So we probably should be. Maybe that can be my post-retirement endeavor.
There you go.
So, talk about, Disco being, really fast growing company right now. Talk about how you think about Austin versus Silicon Valley versus, other places, and just talk about how you ended up here in Austin, Kiwi.
Well, so I've been in Texas for 12 years, but Austin only for the last 3. So I'm relatively new in Austin. And Disco has always had an engineering office in Austin, but we moved headquarters here 3 years ago, which is when I moved down. The way I like to explain this to people who haven't been to Austin, I studied computer science in college, and I graduated during the first dot-com boom. And I remember interviewing in Silicon Valley at the time, and Austin, to me, feels exactly like the Valley did then, right? In the middle of that first boom. And I think if you go back even a year ago, right, there were multiple cities that would be the next Silicon Valley. And now it really feels like that's coalesced around Austin. And for better or for worse, like it or not, this is going to be it. And I think, by the way, that on balance, it's a terrific thing for Austin. I think we've got an opportunity here to get so much of the wonderful things that happened in Silicon Valley, and also to learn some lessons from what happened in Silicon Valley, and to do better and to put a Texas spin on things. And so I'm on the whole very excited. But there certainly are challenges, especially, you and I talked about this, Greg, earlier. As companies become more mature, even Disco, which is a very young company still in the grand scheme of things, right? You face a lot of competition from kind of hot startups, right? And how do you convince people that Planview has been around, what, 25 years, or Disco soon to be 10? How do you lure people into those larger places as opposed to the hot startup down the street? I think the war for talent, right? That's it's only intensifying here in Austin, and it's going to be a big problem and opportunity for all of us who are seeking to build businesses here.
Yeah. And, I think that I think one of the things that you've said that I believe in is, as long as we continue to partner in and around the community, and that's why I've been a longtime supporter of this Austin Technology Council, because it's important that we not just focus on individual businesses. It's how do we partner and coexist in the community to make the community a great place, and not get so self-centered or self-serving in around each one of our particular remits, and always have an opportunity to give back. I've always found Austin, and it's funny, when we first brought Planview to Austin, it was being advertised by the Chamber of Commerce as a great tech community. And what was really here were people that were writing fonts for the Apple Macintosh. So finding people that could, documentation writers, et cetera, just that talent didn't exist back then. But you've seen how it's evolved with Tivoli and Vignette and other companies that kind of became cornerstones in the community, and how private equity, that's something we should probably get into too a little bit, Kiwi, is the role private equity plays as people grow businesses. But I do believe Austin will remain a special place. And I think your point on the Texas spin in this community will continue to differentiate us from Silicon Valley. But also, I think this is going to be a true center for innovation as the world moves forward. And I'm just excited as I've ever been about the future of Austin.
One thing I'm excited about, if you look at the current crop of companies that are kind of similar to Disco in scale and growth, um, the founders of those companies are not interested in kind of swinging for singles or doubles, right? They're really interested in how could you build Amazon of Austin or Microsoft of Austin, an iconic major technology company in Austin. And I think if you look back over the last 20 years, there were many companies that could have done that, but sold relatively early, right? And didn't wind up swinging for the fences. And of course, those are wonderful outcomes for the founders and for the employees and for the community. But I really like the energy that I feel now, right, amongst our peers, Greg, about that now is the moment where we could really put Austin on the map in a big way. Similar, of course, to what Michael Dell accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah. And other people that have been part of these panels, my good friend Mark McLean, and
Yeah.
you're just seeing so many great companies thriving in this community. But you also see companies moving into the community because it's such a great place to it's a great place to do business. And this is a very business friendly society here in Austin. And I think generally this CEOs want to work together to, solve their problems that they face in their business, but also, work together to make Austin, really a great place. And that's what I'm so affirmed about as well, Kiwi.
Greg, how do we not lose that business-friendly atmosphere as the city and our community continues to grow?
Well, I think it's important for all of us to understand the uniques that makes this a business-friendly environment. I think an absence of state income taxes, things that make this a place that we can do business in ways that enable us to continue to drive innovation unencumbered, right? And those are things that I think we just have to, make sure that we continue to drive forward. And, and then also, I think the other thing is what we've been talking about here is I don't know a CEO that I've talked to that hasn't been intentional about employee development.
Right.
The things that I think at the end of the day, you can have a great product, you have a great idea, but I keep coming back to it's great people making companies great.
Yep.
And, as long as, we don't become self-absorbed in our own successes and don't lose sight of the fact that, we have to continue to drive towards creating great employees through this process. The other thing that's interesting just about Texas and Austin is think about, the university systems and the access to young talent that we have, and keeping those young people here in Texas, here in Austin, by showing them great jobs and great opportunities. And at the same time, a great city to live in. I mean, we're so fortunate and blessed to have those things before us. And it's just, those are things that we just cannot lose sight of, Kiwi, as we, continue to see all, because Austin's growing crazily. I mean, I was here when, 183 was 2 lanes, right? And now it's, where our office is out there, right? It's crazy. And, but I think that we have still maintained a business culture of, I don't want to say it's certainly not small town, because it's just not, but I think we've maintained a unique culture for the city.
Are you very involved with the university, with UT?
I speak at universities, and the thing that I love to speak on is leadership, and it's really then just giving young people the ability to ask me, frankly, any question that they want. And that's what I really thrive on, is letting those young people ask me questions. And, the thing that I do see is as they come out of universities, they have this vision that their careers are going to be this monolithic, set one brick on top of the next. And what I try to tell them is your career is really about building a wall. It's not building a stack of bricks. And having courage to walk through the doors as they open, but also having courage to not run from something. Always be intentional about going to something, not running from something. And building those, that tapestry or that wall. So I'm just passionate about speaking at universities and speaking to young people.
I think that point about being intentional about building a career, as you go along, that's a big one, because I find many early and mid-career folks hear the advice, but it doesn't come naturally to do that, right? But when you look at it from the flip side, when you're thinking about hiring a VP or a general manager for something, it's so compelling when the candidate has not come straight up a single functional line. They're not a pure product marketing person or a pure salesperson, but rather they have a resume with exposure to multiple parts of the business. It just makes them a much more compelling candidate for senior roles because they have personal experience in a broader swath of the business. Do you have like a rotational program, or do you do anything at the company to try to develop that in people?
This was one of the things that we when we left the pandemic topic, one of the things that I've been so disappointed about during the pandemic is our intern program. Our intern program that we used to host was probably one of the highlights of the year, is when we brought those interns in, and we were very intentional in developing those interns. In fact, I think we've done a very good job of using that intern program as a great entry point for young people. But it's through that intern program that we gave people broader visibility into the company. We've never really run like a program where we've been intentional about moving people to leadership roles intentionally, but we do promote people cross-functionally within the company. In other words, when there is an opening, often we want to look internally first, and we post those openings internally and give employees the ability to, apply, et cetera, et cetera.
It's something we think about a lot now, again, as we go through this kind of scaling phase, is how do we generate that kind of bench depth, where you've got people, you're not getting them ready for their current role, you're getting them ready so that as you have these leadership openings, many of which come not because of vacancies, but because of growth, right? You have a cohort of people who are promotion ready, right? Who are ready to take on bigger roles, and you've invested in getting them ready and getting them that breadth of experience over time. But it's a challenge, right? Because there's always a trade-off between how much do you invest in developing someone through a rotational program like that versus just going for the short-term solution of get someone in that seat who is ready to go right away, right? It's kind of a trade-off between having that bench depth for the 3 to 5 year time horizon versus getting the person in the seat who will drive results this year.
Well, Amber, I think on that one, that's a good spot to end here on a definite high note on a very energizing hour here. So appreciate it, Greg and Kiwi. Everything was very inspirational, so appreciate it.
Thanks.
And I'd say,
Amber.
and I would say to what you do, Amber, the team, thank you for what you do for the community. You guys I've seen so many positive things, and for any panelist out there, if there's ever anything that I can do to help, don't ever hesitate to reach out.
Greg is going to need help keeping busy.
I'll be sending my resume out soon. So.
Greg, congratulations on the transition. That's amazing.
Thank you, my friend. Guys, it's been an honor. Hope you guys have enjoyed the time. Bye, all.
Bye-bye.
Well, good. Well, thank you, Greg, and thank you, Kiwi and Chase as well. And thank you, everybody that joined us tonight. Congratulations, Greg, on your retirement and your stellar career with Planview, and Kiwi, all of the growth that Disco has had, especially over this last year, and the huge announcements. We're thrilled to have both of these companies as part of our Austin community and as part of our ATC community as well. You all have a wonderful night. Take care, continue to social distance, continue to wear your masks, and get your vaccine so we can all get back together again in person soon. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.